Come with me to meet the President of the United States.
The race for the White House is flooding our feeds.
We just have to be working with them, and if we're not, we're missing a huge way that voters are getting information about the world.
Presidential campaigns tapping into thousands of influencers.
He said to us, the collective presence in this room has more viewership on Gen Z than all of traditional media combined.
But as content creators cash in,
how can you tell what is a genuine grassroots expression of political opinion versus what's being paid for?
This is CBS News Bay Area with Elizabeth Cook.
I'm Anne Makovec in for Liz today, and if you've scrolled social media lately, you've probably seen political content. Presidential campaigns are using it to try to catch voters' attention and ultimately win them over. Today, we are talking with a Bay Area political and media expert about the tactic and the money behind it. Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, are in their first full day of campaigning together for the Democratic ticket. Here's a look at the long line of people waiting for them earlier in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. They've wrapped up their event there and are headed to another battleground state, Michigan. Now, Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance was also in Eau Claire, Wisconsin today. In fact, he landed there at around the same time as the vice president. Vance walked over to Air Force Two and had this to say to reporters.
Just get a good look at the plane, because hopefully it's going to be my plane in a few months. But I also thought you guys might get lonely because the vice president doesn't answer questions from reporters and hasn't for 17 days.
Well, the candidates are working to win over voters in person, through TV ads, and more often online, and they are tapping into the reach of influencers to do it. CBS reporter Jo Ling Kent takes a look at the sophisticated and often expensive tactics.
Look at the volume in this hair.
23-year-old Awasane made a name for herself dispensing beauty tips on TikTok.
I just peed in the White House.
So when she posted this video of her White House bathroom break, her 500,000 followers took notice.
I was just shocked. I was like, did you guys see that marble?
Sane, who met us in Houston, was one of a few dozen influencers invited to the White House to watch the State of the Union and meet President Biden.
He said to us, the collective presence in this room has more viewership on Gen Z than all of traditional media combined.
So here's my birth control vlog.
It was this viral video she posted after the fall of Roe v. Wade
Over the United States in my uterus
that initially caught the attention of a Democratic super PAC. On the right, Turning Point USA has mobilized influencers for years, raising nearly $200 million since 2020.
You realize they're coming for you guys next.
Now, Democratic organizations are flooding the creator community with cash and providing behind-the-scenes access.
Come with me to meet the President of the United States.
We just have to be working with them, and if we're not, we're missing a huge way that voters are getting information about the world.
Rob Flaherty runs digital strategy, previously in the Biden White House and now for the Harris campaign.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
He called the highly memeable Harris a massive asset as the campaign reaches out to thousands of influencers.
What kind of coaching do you give influencers acting on behalf of the Harris campaign?
Talking points, resources, base language.
While Flaherty says the Harris campaign does not pay influencers directly, CBS News found a constellation of other Democratic political organizations that do. In May, Future Forward, the super PAC supporting Harris, hosted panels like Gaming the Algorithm and how advocacy can benefit your business.
In the first 100 days of a Republican presidency under Trump, Project 2025 talks about sacking thousands of civil servants.
Last month, Sane says she was hired by Protect Our Care, a progressive advocacy group that relies on anonymous donors. She made a video warning about Trump's second-term agenda.
They almost help you script it, right?
Right,
Like,
definitely.
She takes their talking points and puts them into her own voice, saying she always discloses when she's being paid.
What's your rate?
So a video just for a creator in my size, an average can go from $3,000 to $10,000 depending and upwards.
This is a bid by campaigns to create authenticity at a small scale.
University of Pittsburgh's Sam Woolley studies political influencers.
How can you tell what is a genuine grassroots expression of political opinion versus what's being paid for?
If you see multiple influencers spreading the same exact message, you can start to realize, some kind of coordination is going on.
Next up for Sunday, the Democratic National Convention.
They just told us that if we wanted to put on our own show, that they would give us all the resources to do that.
The Democrats are rolling out the red carpet.
Definitely, and I'm glad to be on it.
The beauty influencer now applying her own filter to this presidential campaign.
Well, could this social media tactic actually backfire for a campaign? And is this whole thing good for democracy? Our conversation with the Bay Area political expert coming up next. Our conversation today is centered on the growing use of social media by political campaigns and how they're tapping into influencers to try to reach more voters. Joining me now, Dr. Nolan Higdon from CSU East Bay. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So when it comes to battleground states where every vote is going to count, can something like this, an influencer's voice, really tip the scales?
Absolutely. In the last few presidential elections, and all indications are it'll be true of this election as well, there's been a razor-thin margin between the winner and the runner-up. And if the right social media content, hits those people on the periphery, that could change enough votes to change the outcome of the election. Just to give an idea, we're talking about roughly 45,000 votes separated Trump and Biden in 2020, roughly about 120,000 between Clinton and Trump in 2016. So we're not talking about a lot of people you have to convince to change the outcome of an election.
So in that report just before our break, we talked about the fact that they have more of a reach than most of the traditional media combined. When you're talking about people who might not be super political savvy or necessarily interested in the truth, does that become dangerous?
Yeah, it can. False information or political advertising, it's as old as democracy itself. But the kind of safeguard against it is that hopefully you have a population, a citizenry, that can tell the difference between journalism or political advertisements. And right now, the studies show that unfortunately a lot of the electorate can't tell the difference between the two. And that's where you start to get problems in a democracy, when people start conflating things like political advertisements with fact-based journalism.
Right, and we're seeing this more and more. I mean, what do you see for this, when it comes to democracy down the road?
I think it's going to make things quite complicated. There's been, plenty of critiques of news outlets over the history of the United States, but news media have always at some level acted like gatekeepers or referees, right? We would go to the news outlet of the day or the major newspaper when we needed information. But increasingly audiences are turning to influencers, they're turning to podcasters, they're turning to social media accounts. So we don't really have that sort of agreed upon referee or group of referees that we used to have. And as a result, a lot of folks end up in their own reality or their own definition of truth.
Well, right, and that's what we're talking about, these echo chambers that social media often turns into. It depends on who you're following and what you're going to see.
True. You have some control. Who you follow will dictate what you see, but also the algorithm decides what you're going to see. So the platform itself, whether it be a Meta or X or whoever it may be, their algorithm decides what you're going to see in your feed, and nobody's feed is the same as somebody else's. They're all different. So we get a really manufactured version of what we do and don't see on social media.
When it comes to how Republicans and Democrats are using social media with their campaigns, is there any trends that you're seeing there?
It's really tough to discern because a lot of this stuff happens behind the scenes. For instance, in 2016, we didn't really find out about the ways in which the Trump campaign had worked with Facebook until years after the election was over. We got more details about it. So usually this stuff doesn't come out till afterward, but I would be surprised if both parties are not doing everything they can to get their message out on social media.
And when it comes to some of those influencers, like we just heard from somebody who's, popular for doing their hair, why are we listening to that person?
Every audience, I guess, chooses their own person to listen to, maybe just for entertainment purposes or relatability, whatever it may be. But in the process of listening to these individuals for something like hair, for example, you may also get political messages from them. And then audiences like this person for what they've done for the hair videos or whatever. And then they also end up liking what they're doing for politics. So it's kind of a gateway in getting in people to listen to your political views.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who can give you a good hair day, usually a win. All right, Dr. Nolan Higdon from CSU East Bay, thanks for that. Well, still ahead, finding fame thanks to one particular presidential candidate.
We did it, Joe. I am the perfect nominee.
And how a California comedian is really leaning into this political season.
The Bay Area Events Calendar, brought to you by Broadway San Jose.
Here's what's happening in the Bay Area this weekend. Enjoy island cuisine, ukulele music, and celebrate the spirit of the Pacific Islands at the 29th Annual Bay Area Aloha Festival in San Mateo. Or sink your teeth into the Gravenstein Apple Fair in Sebastopol. The award-winning Best Musical Come From Away is returning to San Jose for 1 weekend only this November. Download the Broadway San Jose app now to access the pre-sale code. Tickets go on sale tomorrow at 10 a.m. at BroadwaySanJose.com. The event calendar is brought to you by Broadway San Jose.
Well, social media influencers are not the only ones capitalizing on the presidential campaign season. Some comedians are also getting a boost online. Reporter Elizabeth Wagmeister has that story.
Vice President Kamala Harris.
Are you ready to get to work?
Rocketing to the top of the Democratic presidential ticket.
Yes, you may clap.
Not necessarily a laughing matter.
It's a Kamala phenomenon.
Unless you're a comedian, like Allison Reese.
First off, I'm hilarious.
Her impressions of Harris have lit up social media, a few getting millions of views.
We did it, Joe. I am the perfect nominee.
Reese started impersonating Harris back in 2019.
It's story time.
President Joe Biden's sudden end of his campaign and handoff to Harris has boosted the LA-based comedian's platform.
It was like a cartoon with my jaw on the floor for a good 3 minutes, and I was just in shock. It's go time. Let's do this. Let's make content.
Give us the breakdown of what makes a good Kamala impression.
With the laugh, you got to start off it's a big energy, and then you really say it's like. But then also, you gotta get the cadence, okay? And let me be clear. The cadence, okay? So important.
Harris herself has said she likes impressions of her.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Namely, from SNL's Maya Rudolph.
I grew up watching Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
So the thought that anyone would be in any way depicting me on Saturday Night Live was just, I was a bit overwhelmed.
Harris's pop culture relevance has exploded in the last week, largely thanks to viral memes. Pop star Charli XCX gave the vice president the ultimate effortless cool girl stamp of approval by posting just 3 words on X: Kamala is brat, a play on the singer's latest album, which propelled Harris into the Gen Z conversation.
If the pop culture stuff gets a little silly, could that have some downsides? Sure. But that's also what movements are about. There are creators, there are artists, there are people who write songs. So that is all left to them, and she'll do what she does best, which is just say, if you elect me, here's what I'm going to do.
Well, let me just tell you something. I have my mother's laugh.
Harris making no apologies for her style.
Don't be confined to other people's perception.
Strategists point to past pop culture success in pushing Harris to lean into the moment.
What's your message for her?
Kamala, if you're watching, please let me introduce you at the DNC.
She is pretty good. Now, she says she's not impersonating Vice President Harris solely for the entertainment value. She says as a Black woman, seeing Harris as vice president and now running for president has had a real profound impact on her. We're going to be right back.
Stern Grove Festival presents a free concert featuring jazz and funk legend Herbie Hancock and the all-star ensemble, the SF Jazz Collective. Sunday at 2. Stream or watch it live on kpix.com or Pix Plus.
Thanks for joining us for today's conversation about the growing use of social media in political campaigns. We'd love to hear what you think. Is it good for democracy or creating a deeper divide? Post your thoughts online using the hashtag KPIX.